Welcome to Through the Glass. Today I have a good friend, excellent musician, a real creative type. I hope to get into a lot of that today with him. Jon Francis. Jon, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. When we talked the other day, I told you were on the short list when I first conjured this idea.
How long is that list anyway?
It's 632 people. I Googled people. And then I alphabetized it. And eventually we got to J.
Sure.
Or F came first. I think we did it by last name. But no, in all seriousness, I was sitting on the front porch with my wife, Julie. And, I was like, I really want to do this thing. She's like, well, who the heck are you going to have on? And I'm like, well, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought that far. And I was just kind of brainstorming people who I know, yet I don't know super well, who have intrigued me at some point over the years, and just either through the work they do, their creativity, or just, sometimes just get a nice energy from someone, and you fit all those boxes. So here you are. Thank you. And normally, so I don't know exactly when this will air, or whatever the term is these days, but today's Super Bowl Sunday. So I know normally you'd be doing keg stands and grilling wings for the boys.
Super Spreader Sunday. I know nothing about sports at all. I couldn't. Football, I know there's a ball, there's a whistle, there's a little dance, and there's a flag, right? There's a flag that they have.
Come on, that's really?
I don't. You know what's funny? I lived in Manhattan a long time ago, and I was working in Hell's Kitchen, and there was an Irish pub that I used to go to all the time, and they, football, soccer, was always on the television there, and I go in and I open the door to like utter chaos, and everybody's got the jerseys on, and I just kind of go in and just have a drink. Like I don't know how to interact with people that are really over the top sports nuts. And this little Irish guy comes up to me and he's just like staring at me. And he's like, Liverpool or Man United? And I almost didn't even understand him, and I was just like, oh, yeah.
You're quickly trying to assess the flags and the color schemes in the room.
And he's just looking and he's like sizing me up and he's like, maybe he should just stand there looking cool and not say anything to anyone. And he just walked back and started shouting with his friends again. I was like, okay, that's my extent. Like, that's how deeply I understand sports.
But isn't it kind of, I'm a few steps ahead of you in that respect as far as knowledge, but I'm not a fan of any of it. But I can get sucked into a game. I grew up watching... Well, I probably just grew up watching whatever my father was watching, because I didn't have any say on what was on. So it was baseball during baseball season, football during football season, and hockey during hockey season. So I learned a lot about the game and the rules. It does increase your chances of caring if you have a sense of the rules.
Yeah.
Past like ball, whistle, but I never cared about a team per se, maybe a little bit when I was young just to sort of fit in, but it's kind of cool being around those guys, isn't it? Like, well, the energy is insane.
The cool thing, and this kind of dovetails into music nicely, is that, you may not have a team or what do they call it? Fantasy football or anything like that, like to that level. But I think anybody can go to a game and have a great time.
Yeah.
Because there's just absolute energy, and it's the same thing with music. You may not necessarily like a particular band, but, if they're doing what they're doing, full tilt and giving their heart and 100%, you're going to feel that energy, and everybody in the room is, and it's an experience. And it's a communal experience, which is, one of the reasons why we have that stuff and why it's so popular. So that's something that's definitely missing right now, I think, in probably both sports to some extent, but definitely music.
Well, it's drama.
Yeah.
And like that's a wonderful element of humanity, is dramatic things and being invested in something. I guess a lot of it in recent years has been replaced by political drama, which isn't real drama. I feel like that's more conjured, manufactured drama, and probably doesn't people's teams. I think it can get a little dangerous.
It's not
but
a human
sports
drama.
are pure. I mean, unless of course it's rigged or there's other things going on. But it's whether you like sports or not, whether you like music or not, it's very pure. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that whoever's up there, down there, or over there is doing their best, and you can't help but respond to that and feel like it's good to be alive right now.
Yeah, I mean the fact that people do have that level of commitment and passion for any one thing, you know, whether it's, you know, sports or music or sewing or cooking, anything, you know, like when someone has that level of dedication to it, where it's not just a hobby, where, you know, if they don't do it, they feel physically sick, you know, like that level of, I need to do this. You can see it. And it's undeniable, you know, so.
And there's nothing like that. There's nothing that rivals soccer, football in the world.
It's crazy.
It's insane. I've traveled a little bit, and some of the scariest and most exciting things I've ever been to have been soccer games in other countries, where it's violent as hell. It's you know, amongst the fans, it's probably more civil on the court field. See, I don't know what I'm talking about now.
My friend Tim Kuiper played with View Farcature one year for the opening of the World Cup. And he played to like tens of thousands of people. And I was just like, these people were already nuts. And now they're like, you know, at the kickoff music event. And it's like a billion times, like the energy, even watching it on television.
What is that?
Was insane.
You used a term there. I didn't catch it.
The World Cup?
Oh, you said Farcature.
Oh, View Farcature.
What is that?
He's Ale Farcature's son. So it's...
the musician.
You know, yes.
I love that guy's music.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend, Spellman, he turned me on to his music years and years ago. It's Malian, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's his son who I actually started listening to more, View Farcature. But it, you know, Ali Farcature was one of those guys that started like the Afrobeat thing. You know, it was like the African interpretation of American pop music, and, you know, mixing sounds from Mali and Morocco and all these, you know, regional musics, and using the actual instruments and those rhythms that are, you know, overlaid on the, you know, 4/4 beat of American pop music.
That's interesting, because what I got turned on to, I mean, I don't know how long he's been doing his thing, but the record that David passed on to me was it must have been early, because it was literally just, it sounded like someone had a good microphone and there were people in a circle and there was hand claps. It sounded very live, and it's awesome. We listen to it all the time. My kids love it. And some of the rhythms, you can't catch them. You catch them every now and then. You can find the one, and it's so awesome.
I went kind of down a rabbit hole with that. My friend is a DJ, and he was very into Afrobeat stuff. And my friend Neil, I was in a band with him, and he's in the Ripeye Brothers, and Neil O'Brien, phenomenal artist and musician, but he curates these wonderful DJ sets, and he always has that you know, that sweet spot of that Afrobeat stuff. And he turned me on to a lot of stuff, and I started getting into it. And I almost felt like in the beginning, oh, this sounds wrong. You know, like there's extra beats, like it doesn't, and then one day it's like listening to jazz. You know, it's like listening to heavy metal, you know, hair metal your whole life, and then hearing jazz, and you're like, cool, whatever. And then one day it just clicks, and you're like, oh, I get it. You know, and the feel changes, and the recordings, a lot of them are very organic, you know. It's again like you hear shuffling in the background and it's just a mic in a room. There's a guy, Lobi Traore, who I fell in love with. Like, his music is just so pure. And I believe he had played with Ali Fakature at some point. But you just hear it, you know, the sound. It's a mix of, you know, Jimi Hendrix and music that his family came from for thousands of years. You know, it's like all mixed together, and you can't fake that, and that's what's beautiful about it. You know, it's just even if it's repetitive, there's an intensity that builds. He doesn't need to solo everywhere. Like, maybe, you know, I haven't heard him solo often, but it always followed a pattern. But it was his playing that was just perfect for what it was, and it embodied everything about his culture, what he was feeling that day, you know. And I saw a documentary on him, and you kind of paint pictures, you know, when you listen to records on headphones, you know, you just kind of zone off into a world. And they were showing the recording of one of the songs that I really liked, and it was literally in a little shack with a broken pipe and a crappy seat in the corner, you know, goats outside, and, you know, he's walking in with a dirty t-shirt and did this most beautiful thing, you know. It just and I think that's one of the things, is where you have music that's, when you're in a dark place in your life, the music has the ability to pull you out of that situation and take you to someplace better, someplace that you want to be, that you want to express towards to other people.
It becomes something to strive for as well. And I think that's what sports is for a lot of people too. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids, a lot of young people who are in situations, and it's like, all right, well, if I could aim for this, at least I can get on this team. Maybe I can be the best one on the team. Maybe I can go to this school because of it. It becomes a ladder. Mm-hmm. I would say art and sports sort of, there's a lot of things that don't coincide, but in that respect, they do coincide.
Yeah, you know, you don't hear of it too much in the States, but whenever I would hear interviews of guitarists in the UK, they all were like on the track team and were heavily involved in sports as they were coming up. You know, like Jimmy Page was heavily into sports when he was young, when he was learning skiffle, stuff like that. Like, I just kept hearing all these stories about, you know, these amazing guitar gods that were, you know, also into sports when they were kids. And I think that probably instilled that sense of competition, to strive to be better, to you know, to go that extra mile.
And it's cultural in a lot of those countries too. Maybe we feel less of that in the States just because our culture is baby.
Yeah, I mean, we have like
if you even want to say there is a culture.
Yeah, we have the jocks and the nerds and the this and the that, and you know, it's like never the two meet except in the movie theater, and you know,
maybe especially in this part of the country too, in the Northeast, where sort of everyone comes in, but eventually disperses. I mean, if you go out to the Midwest, you know, football is king, so maybe that's like that's an equivalent.
So is corn and cheese, depending where you are.
I love cheese.
I love corn.
Let's take a road trip.
Okay.
We'll pick a sport. We're gonna go see it.
Okay.
We're gonna eat.
But it's gonna be like the most bizarre sport. It can't be like football or baseball.
No, we'll get beat up. We got to do something where we could skate through. I don't know. What is it?
It's got to be like the American curling team that's out in Alabama. We got to go find them and just like watch them practice.
All right, we'll get a big stone. We'll get some ice. There might still be some frozen areas around here. After this, let's have a little bit more whiskey. Let's find a big stone. Let's just start practicing.
Yes.
Then we'll get some corn. And cheese.
You know what I think would be good is those old-fashioned vacuums with the handles, the round ones, and just like slide that across the floor.
I have a mini one that is like a mini version of that at home because I have little kids.
That's a great idea.
Basically, I just follow them around all day.
We'll just keep pushing shop vacs around to practice.
We got a new sport. It's called Tidy Up. How did you you're a really creative person in my opinion, and I would assume most people's opinion, and we can get into that. But how did you get turned on to creativity and exploration? What was some of your gateway experiences or people coming up? Because I don't know anything about your upbringing. As you said the other day when we were on the phone, we maybe met about 15-ish years ago, and I don't even remember the circumstances. So maybe we should talk about that too. But how did you get sort of started on your path creatively?
Being awkward, not knowing how to relate to people. Like I didn't even listen to music until I got into high school, and late into high school. Like music it was not even in my life. I was an avid reader, and I was kind of a very large kid, and sometimes the big kid gets picked on a lot. So I just was like, you know what? I'm going to stay in my own little world that I created, and I'm just going to take these books that I'm reading, and I'm just going to live in that world. And that's what I did for a really long time.
What kind of books?
I was a big fan of early science fiction. Like there's old radio shows that I still listen to, like from the 30s and stuff, like the old sci-fi stuff. Like I was a big C.S. Lewis fan, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and as I got older, like Philip K. Dick, like all those things that informed, my life more than music ever did. Even though my brother at the time, was a roadie for every hair metal band in New Jersey.
He was good.
Just funny. I woke up one time and members of Twisted Sister were sleeping in my living room.
So your brother was
like
really
14.
Your brother was really responsible then.
Yes. He was really good at his job.
No, being serious, because like you need the roadie has to be responsible.
Yes, and he was. I mean,
it's not a joke. Like you got to be on point.
Yeah, he's got a. My brother has the math gene that I don't, and he kind of looks at sound technically. So he's also an artist, and it's that weird combination of math and art coming together to where he could set a rack of EQs, no problem, and then do the lighting rig and all the sound and everything. He was amazing. But he, worked with Bruce, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Warrant, Twisted Sister, like all those bands.
If you had a lot of hair,
except
for Bruce, he was an outlier there in the hair world. Although he never wrote hair metal, but he didn't. It's not too late. He's still doing his thing, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
but my brother was, my brother used to play racquetball with him in the early days. Like, I remember when Rosalita came out. Like that was the era that my brother was working with him, like back then. But yeah, he toured the world, he was the roadie. He even had a tattoo that said, "We are the road crew." And he's just a badass, rode a Harley. He worked for the Harley Institute. He became a teacher at the Harley Institute. He's just a terrible badass, But in the same respect, that pushed me away from music, because I was like, I don't want any part of that at all, But in Sayreville in the 80s, you had to be in a band. It wasn't an option. Like you needed to play an instrument and be in a couple bands, and that's just what everybody in town did, because it was like, oh, that's a way out. Music. We'll all do that. We'll all tease our hair up to the moon, back when I had hair, and just, you just follow what's successful, and that's what we did as kids, but I was never really into it. Didn't really. It was more of just a way to get into a social scene that I was completely devoid of. Just had no way of relating to people on a human level. So I was like, all right, I'll put on a bass.
And how old are you in this at this stage?
Like 16, I guess, 16, 17. And I messed around with it for a little bit, never took it really seriously. And then it was like my late 20s, almost my 30s, when I got into like free jazz and Indian music, like Hindustani and Carnatic music, and it just literally spoke to me. Like, I almost can't describe it. It was that's weird. Like when people say, they've lived past lives or whatever, and it's like I knew nothing about it, but in the same respect, I understood it completely, and I could sit there and listen to that music for hours, and it could be the same thing over and over. It doesn't have to have these big orchestrations that are in typical Western music, but it speaks to the devotion. A lot of Indian music, even if it's the classical music, it comes from a center of devotion, and it's deeply personal as well as something that the whole group can relate to. And I was just transfixed by that. Same thing, like listening to Delta blues, like real, like the real deal pain and sorrow of the blues, of like Congo Square, like real heartache and oppression, and the music that comes out of that. A lot of the Indian, music came out of that as well. You have such a huge population of people in a difficult time, and music becomes a bastion. It becomes a refuge, and it becomes something that speaks to you spiritually. And I just connected with it in ways that I just couldn't understand. Like I had no precursor. It wasn't like I was like, okay, I've studied guitar and now this is guitar and that's how you play guitar, and then you're in a band and then whatever. But this was just like, it just became, instead of it being music, it was just something that came at me. It was almost like a wild animal or something, or a wave. Like imagine being in the ocean for the first time and not realizing that waves are going to crash at you, and then just having it completely engulf you, and you're spinning in the tide, and you're just, what's going on? It was like that. It was that same feeling, the first time I heard that type of music. And it was and there's a line of logic through like free jazz and stuff, and Ornette Coleman and Albert Eiler and all these guys that spoke to me, even though the notes are different, the dialogue is the same. And I just instantly gravitated to that. And then I just started picking up instruments and trying to make those sounds, Like I almost went about it the opposite way, where I had no schooling on this. And I was just like, I'm going to figure out how to make that sound with whatever's in front of me. And that's kind of how I did, I've done things now for decades.
When did you start? Is that about the time you started composing and writing your own music? Or were you already doing that even in the teenage rock scene that maybe your heart wasn't as connected to, but you were doing?
I wasn't really writing anything at that point. It didn't mean anything. So when I started like either making my own instruments or doing weird things to instruments, like tearing frets out of a guitar and like sticking, tools in between the strings just to make it sound weird and stuff like that. Like I was like, I'm just going to do this and figure out how to make that work. So I wasn't, interested in composition at the time. I was more interested in learning how sound worked and how a sound can make you feel something versus certain notes in a scale. You know what I mean? So it was like, to me, I remember like just hearing like a rickety, when I was living in Florida, like this rickety old air conditioner, and I was just like, that sounds awesome. You know, it was just like and you'd hear like water dripping out of it and stuff. I was like, that sounds beautiful. And I was in Missouri, and I was stuck at these out in the Midwest, like trains go forever. It's not like here where there's a couple trains and then, the SUVs.
No, if you catch the train,
tracks.
you
stop
the
need to
car
settle in
and go somewhere.
Yeah.
Get lunch.
Yeah, but it was the same thing where it was like this rhythm, so like for literally 10 minutes, and it didn't change because it was the same type of wheel going over the same track for 10 minutes, and you're just like, that's amazing. And Dave Brubeck, I had read when he had come up with Take 5, was a very similar type of thing. Like, I think he was like laying under some kind of tank that was dripping or something, and he came up with the rhythm for that song. That 5/4 that really wasn't in popular music ever before that.
Still isn't.
No, it's very rare. I think Jethro Tull might be the only other group that like successfully tried to do that. But so composition was never on my mind. It wasn't until I started finding like-minded people that it wasn't just some weird thing that I was doing. And I really wasn't ever performing out yet. And I started finding people that were like-minded. And I was like, oh, we can build something. And I started hearing what percussionists were doing, and singers and string players. And I was like, wow, you can really like build something here. And again, I didn't really have that basis in popular music. So it was like tabula rasa, like I had a blank slate that I could work with. I didn't try to, even though I absolutely love Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page, there's a little bit of that in some of the stuff that I do, but it was really trying to because I wasn't like a working musician or something like that, I could just treat it as art and make whatever I wanted out of it.
A lot of the music that you've mentioned, be it Brubeck, be it traditional Indian music, be it free jazz, a lot of that music, at least for me, and I'm assuming maybe it's the same for you, I think you and I have a lot in common in that respect, it becomes a meditation.
Oh, yeah.
It allows you to find a certain spot, whereas popular music and rock and roll, I love fucking rock and roll.
Oh, a good hook. There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it. But it hits a spot which is magical, and that's godly to me. However, meditation opens space for you to find a spot. And I think a lot of that music does that. And I think that's what I like about all the music that you described too. It allows you to settle in, open up, and then discover, well, whatever it is you're going to discover that day.
There's a place you can inhabit in that music, in all those types. Some music, you're listening to it on the radio and it feels good. If you're working out, it's awesome. You're driving, you need it. Or it has like a lot of times you associate a song with a period in your life or something. That accentuates a relationship or a moment. And then there's the music that allows you in to be a part of it, and you understand it implicitly, and you sit with it, and it informs you, and you, in a way, you enhance the music by your appreciation of it. And to me, that's a relationship that's almost mind-numbing. I thought about this a lot during lockdown because I was actually getting into meditation for the first time during that. And to me, music and silence are the two most important things, and they're almost the same. It's like this, you know, yin and yang. It's like they're the two sides of the same coin. You can't have good music without the silence. You know, that break, that drop is what makes it. You know what I mean? The dynamic is the beauty in it. You know, stopping the music makes you realize that you loved the music, because when it's going on and you're enthralled by it, it's not really a moment of reflection. It's just like, you know, you're going with the flow, you're in it, you're really digging it. But when it stops, then you have to actually think about what you loved about it, and then it comes back, and then you're back in that moment again. And it's like, it's the closest thing to real magic I could ever understand.
Yeah, especially in a rhythm, in a rhythm section of a band.
Yeah.
Where it's not hitting are those spots where you're kind of like, you're hanging, but you're feeling it the most. It's the best.
There's nothing like that. And, you know, one of the things that I mentioned bass before, but I spent some time learning the bass because I was like, I can do this. You know, I was like, I can figure this out. But I started getting into like James Jamerson, Jaco Pastorius, you know, like Carol Kay, like those amazing session players, you know, Abe Laboriel, like all these guys that were on all the records that you're hearing, you know, in top 40 or whatever, and just like learning that pocket. You know what I mean? Oh. Even if I'm not playing bass or a rhythm instrument, if I'm doing something more melodic, I'm always thinking in terms of bass. I love bass players like Richard Bona, you know, like, you know, it's
Pino
like
Palladino.
Pino, oh my God. He's, you know.
Talk about hitting the spots. Oh my gosh.
When, you know, I listened, you know, Gary Newman, that the bass lines for like I Assassin and that record is like, you didn't hear that before. And then honestly, Pino Palladino was like the guy that got me really into bass. And then I started learning all the others because there's a song Murder by David Gilmour, and there's a bass solo in the middle of the song. And it's this most beautiful melody. It's like, ba, ba, na, 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 ba, da, 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 ba, na, na, na. I'm like, what the fuck instrument is that? And I was like, it's a bass. It's a goddamn electric bass. And I sat there, and it's like one of the few things that I ever tried to learn on an instrument. Like, I sat there and I stopped the tape player, and I went and I rewound it and did it. And I was like, oh my God, like that's amazing.
Pino's one of those guys. I feel like he's like a gateway.
Yeah.
You don't realize, and maybe if you don't even realize it when you're listening to something, but then you happen to maybe catch him, and he's like a session guy. He plays with everybody.
He's been on hundreds of records. But then you're watching him,
and you're like, oh, that's what's going on.
His pocket is so tight. You know what I mean? Like, he can do all those beautiful melodies because he's already implied the rhythm. You know what I mean? Like, it's, even if he's not playing, he's one of those guys that he could just kind of play one note and you hear it and you're like, yeah, it's Pino. You know? And the notes that they don't play are miraculous, you know? Like, knowing where not to play is one of the most amazing things in the world.
He had a big year. I don't know if this stuff came out on the same year, but he was doing a session, what is it? The Austin City Limits with 9 Inch Nails.
Okay.
So 9 Inch Nails had decided, Trent Reznor had decided to do Austin City Limits. And, you know, maybe that's not the venue to make it a 9 Inch Nails show, but, you know, Trent Reznor could probably do anything he wants. And
Sure.
He turned it a little bit more into a groove-oriented soul kind of thing, like dark soul. Pino up there. You got to check it out. All you folks out there, please check out the 9 Inch Nails.
I'm sure,
Austin
you know,
City Limits, and have it please don't listen to it on anything crappy. Please have something where some low end can come through, and you're going to understand what John and I are talking about.
And that Gary Newman connection works with that, because Pino was playing with Gary at that point where Gary was almost getting into almost like an R&B type of feel. You know, he went in that weird mechanical direction with Two Boy Army early on. And in that period, he was trying to open up and try different things. And Trent Reznor was hugely influenced by Gary Newman. So it makes sense. That's where I'm 100% sure, even though I've never heard it, that's where the Pino connection came from.
You're going to love it. And
I
know you're the kind of guy who's going to put on big puffy headphones and close your eyes, and you're going to lose your mind. And the other thing that I feel like it might have come out right around the same exact time was he was the bassist on D'Angelo's Black Messiah album, which is out of control. I love D'Angelo anyway, but Black Messiah is heavy record.
Sure.
And it's nuts. It is nuts. I think it's Questlove produced it and also played drums on it.
Questlove and Pino Palladino together.
Well, you got to hear it. Clearly, there's programmed drums, and then you have Questlove playing, and you have Pino. There are 3 rhythms going on, almost like how in the later Radiohead records, you're off balance.
The later like King of Limbs and stuff like that, like hugely influenced by Afrobeat stuff.
Oh yeah,
you know, and they were all doing like dub Afrobeat DJ sets. Like they were all everybody in the band was like a DJ as well in Radiohead, and they were playing all that stuff all the time. So it makes sense that would have, you know, they could have probably gone from the early sort of post-punk thing to either prog or that, and they went that way, you know, and it's informed by that stuff that they were listening to. So when you hear those rhythms, you know, when I don't know, is it the song Bloom or something, the first track on King of Limbs, where you hear that there's all these different rhythms going on.
The shekere, which is so wobbly to begin with. There's no play in that thing straight.
Right. No, you can't.
It's like, I love feeling, I mean, obviously, the average musician cannot be effective with a wobbly rhythm. You know, this is high art we're talking about here. Not that I'm not aspiring to that, but I'm not there.
To be so confident on where the one is, to be able to do that that in itself is an art form.
That's when they started playing with 2 drummers too, isn't it? The dude from what's the band? Portishead.
I'm spacing on his name, but
like they're just off. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, and they do those basement recordings too, where you know, they did a couple albums like that where they just recorded, and in my opinion,
In Rainbow's
they're
one
better.
It's better than the
record.
It's better than the album. It's
so hot.
Makes me mad in a way.
Yeah.
I almost get mad.
I mean, I'm glad they did that, you know, because I've never seen them live. One of the things that I wish, you know, I've never seen them, you know. So getting live music back, that is like a bucket list item for me.
Really? You haven't seen Radiohead? Because they've played around here a million times.
They have, and I was always, all right, like, I need to do that because something that's very close to me. I've loved the music of Jeff Buckley. One of the great artists that we lost way too early. And I had done tributes to him a couple of times, but somebody was like, and this was back in the 90s, they were like, Jeff's playing at Shanae, let's go. I was like, they're like, he's moving to Memphis. Like, this is the last time you're going to be able to see him.
He had a residency there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like they
was there for a while.
That place became what it was because of what he called his cafe days at Shanae. And he was doing a last couple dates at Shanae before he moved. And I was like, I'll catch him whenever, you know? And then he died. And the Grace, that record, it's one of those things where it's like, the very first notes of that, I'm like getting emotional. It's like the very first notes of it speak to you in a way that doesn't matter what's going on, you know? Like, you could be having the shit-tayest day in history, but when you hear that, it's gone. Everything else is gone. And you're in that ecstatic understanding of what music is.
He's an original. I
Yeah.
remember where I was, who played that album for me. They're like, oh, you don't know Grace by Jeff Buckley? No. He's like, sit down. We smoked some weed. I sat down. It's a friend of mine in Red Bank. He said, just relax. I have to go do some errands. He just like left me there. And I mean, and everybody's hitting on all cylinders. So yes, you have Jeff Buckley. I mean, it's all subjective, but his voice is so beautiful, it's ridiculous. And his playing is perfect, and the songs are perfect. And there's no one else who could make that song, cop that song, although a lot of people try to. But the band,
all of them
the drummer,
were amazing.
Forget his
Matt
name.
Johnson.
Matt Johnson. Oh.
Who now plays with St. Vincent. He is also, you know, an accomplished musician in his own right and his own stuff. But I actually got a drummer. I got to know some of Jeff's friends, and I got lessons from my drummer in the band that I was in at the time with Matt. Because I was just like, if you could take lessons with anybody, who would it be? He was like, Matt Johnson. I was like, here's his number. He's waiting for you to call him. Set up some lessons. You know, and it was just like a little bit of that magic of you know, it's like they were all there when that became something. You know, when that fire started, when that sound blossomed, they were there. And I think people carry that. And when you meet people that were involved in those type of things, you carry a little bit of that. Like, I'm a pretty pragmatic guy, you know, 9 to 5, but there's something you know, when someone deeply holds something like music and art, there's something, I truly believe there's something tangible. It's not just, you know, you're not just a pile of chemicals either feeling good or, you know, it's not like an on-off situation to me. Like, there's something tangible in that expression, that artistic expression, that need to do that. And you pass that on. You know, you can do it from just listening to it or seeing a show or talking to somebody or seeing art, or, you know, I get inspired honestly more by visual art, going to museums and stuff, than listening to music, because I think visual art and music complement each other very well, as well as the written word. But, you know, yeah, that whole, Jeff was like I think Jimmy Page might have said, or somebody, you know, in that genre of, he was like a pure drop in a sea of noise, you know. That describes it perfectly.
Can't even put it in a genre, really.
No, you can't, because he did so many different things, and he did them so well, and in a way, in a time where it wasn't as appreciated as it would have been, you know. But you wouldn't have music if he didn't do that. You definitely wouldn't have Muse. You know, you wouldn't have a lot of you wouldn't have that melodic side to heavy music, you know? Like, he married, you know, he took what Led Zeppelin did and just ran with it. And I think a lot of young guys, when they heard that record, they were like, that's what my record's going to sound like.
The production on it is great. It's very bare bones. And that's really what allows Matt Johnson in particular in the band to shine. And there's nothing technical going on,
no,
particularly with the drumming. Because I've seen a few live. I never saw Jeff play, but I have one or two concert shows.
I collected every bootleg.
He's just playing. He's just playing like a rock and roll drummer.
But he's listening and he's watching. You know, like they were so tight.
So tight.
And Mick Rundle on bass. You know,
heavy bass.
Michael Ty
heavy bass
on the other guitar.
Michael used to play down at the Saint. I feel like every him and his
he
band
was
used
in
to come through and
the
tour.
AM was the
AM. That's right.
Ken Parker Kindred, I think, was the drummer that replaced Matt on some of the sessions for My Sweetheart the Drunk. They did that. They were AM. But yeah, I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole all day.
I went down to I took a road trip. You know Mark Prescott?
Mm-hmm.
I took a road trip with Mark down to New Orleans. I was trying to plan another trip. It fell through. I had just met him at the time. We didn't really know each other that well. He's like, I'm driving to New Orleans.
That's a great place to get to know somebody.
Well, a 26-hour car ride is also a good way to get to know someone. He's like, I'm driving down to New Orleans. You should come with me. And I'm just like, yeah. So we threw the guitars in the car. We made a few pit stops along the way. Hit a few friends at college.
Two Jersey boys in New Orleans.
Dude, I remember a couple gas stations along the way. I don't know if it was like Alabama or something, where I was like, we better get out of here. I don't care that we need gas. Those two dudes sitting out front with that look, and we got the Jersey plates, and we're a bunch of idiots, like 40 ounces. I was like, no, this isn't good. I feel like, all those creepy Southern movies that you saw when you were younger.
That's where the inspiration came from.
And there's like swamp everywhere. I'm like, no one would. You think the Meadowlands has got a few bodies underneath it?
Boy,
forget about it. Like this place.
You can still see the bodies down south. They don't even hide them.
Those little humps. You thought it was a turtle shell, but it's really Johnny's back. We made a point. He made a point to take me by Jeff Buckley's childhood home. We stopped by the Wolf River, where Jeff had passed away. I don't know if anyone really.
It's right
knows.
at the foot of Beale Street.
Yeah, we took a little.
I did that.
He knew where to go.
Myself,
he knew where to go, and we just kind of sat there and meditated a little bit in that spot, and just kind of soaked up the energy. Tragic, just was out swimming one day and maybe got caught up in a wake from a boat.
I forgot the guy's name he was with. He was like a guitar tech.
Yeah,
the two of them were there.
Maybe doing sessions for My Sweetheart. Or?
Yeah, he was recording some of the sessions, and Jeff went in fully clothed, and the guy's name escapes me, but he was like a guitar tech guy, and turned his back and then turned around and Jeff was gone. And it's so creepy when you listen to the lyrics of the song Grace. It's, was that fate? Because the lyrics are about him drowning, like it's you get just like chills, like to this day when I listen to that song.
There's a song on My Sweetheart the Drunk too that's in that world, like Nightmare by the Sea or something.
Nightmares by the Sea, yeah.
There's he's got a few references.
Lots of angry young men. Yeah, it's like it's one of those things where people say like he was a tortured soul because his grandfather was a writer, amazing writer, and his father took folk music.
His father was popular.
He took folk music out of just the flower child type of 60s thing and not legitimized it, but took it in a different direction. And his vocal range was unbelievable, So
it's in the family, it's in the genes.
Vocal range. It's in the genes, yeah. And I got to know his mother, Mary, and Jeff was a prodigy. He went to a Musicians Institute, and he probably had the greatest knowledge of like music theory of any guitarist in that era. You know what I mean? Like any rock guy. Like he knew every jazz chord in existence. He could play anything.
Well, that's why nobody can play any of the songs on Grace properly.
Right.
You could sing the song.
Right.
You could strum the root notes.
Yeah, you could change the tuning.
You're not playing any
it.
of those songs. I don't care who you are.
No,
You're not doing it.
Unbelievably talented.
It's like a Nick Drake or something. You're not going to play a Nick Drake song.
No, I mean, that's one of those things. It's like there's certain songs that you should not play. And Pink Moon is one of them. You know, don't touch it. Out of respect. You can sit there and hum along to it and cover it on your own if you like, but don't release it, because it's like the vocal on Pink Moon, I mean, it makes me cry. Because when you know the backstory of him and the depression that he went through and his addictions and his tragic end, it's like when you hear him say Pink, well, like when he's just repeating Pink, where he's like Pink, 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 it's almost not like singing. It's almost like a lament, you know, where it's like he's, you know, it's like Syd Barrett too, same thing, where it's like, you know, these amazing tortured artists that created things that you wouldn't cover it, you know, like you can only appreciate it.
And him in particular, he would, from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong, he would just kind of just created his own guitar tunings and, well, this, you know, created chording and tunings just around his own melody. So there's a lot of them are not in anything standard,
right,
or even
there's voicings that you know, wouldn't make sense if somebody even tried them. You know, it's like Kurt Cobain was the same way too. You know, it's like anybody that, it's like they're just trying to get the idea out of your head. You know, it's like I don't care how I do it. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's very hard to figure that stuff out.
I had tickets to go see Nirvana, and he had passed away.
Yeah.
And so that ticket stub never got used, and obviously that's not the tragic part of that story, but I really felt like I missed out on something. I was like, damn, like I wanted to experience Nirvana in front of my face.
Yeah. I was in a Shoney's parking lot in Florida, Tampa, Florida, when I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time. And I was like, hallelujah. Because it was just like weird. It was like metal was on a trajectory, you know, where it was like, how fast can people play? You know, it was like crazy shit, just insane stuff and just excess and just nuts. And then all of a sudden this guy in a plaid shirt comes in and does that. Like that was building for a long time, but you know, on the East Coast we didn't know about it. It was all West Coast stuff, you know. It was in Seattle, you know, like they were building it there, but when it hit, we were just like, what? Like, what? Wait a minute, what?
I didn't have an American band that had really turned me on prior to that. I was just listening to all that moody shit out of Manchester.
Yeah.
You know, like real weepy Manchester stuff. And
I was listening to, at the time, like, I think the day that I heard that, I was listening to Boy with the Arab Strap by Belle and Sebastian.
You needed some Nirvana. You needed some Nirvana.
I needed some fried okra and Nirvana, and I got both that day.
That album came out, and I occasionally would DJ a party here and there. I have no idea why, but it just seemed like fun. It was probably my only way to get invited to a party. It's probably really what it was. And I put that on, and a lot of people hadn't heard it yet. Some people went so nuts that somebody ran through a wall.
Wow.
They went through the sheetrock. Party over. Party over.
That will end a party.
Owner of the space.
It's the interesting part of a movie, but when it happens in reality, the party stops.
That's when I recognized the power. That person recognized it too. You know.
Yeah.
Face full of sheetrock, and that party ended immediately, and we were getting screamed at by the owner of the space. I think it was like a dentist's office or something.
Yeah.
And
of course it was.
And he just lost his mind.
Lost his mind. Went through the X-ray machine. Caused thousands of dollars of damage, but learned a lesson. I think you all learned a lesson that day.
Oh, yes, I did, John. I learned play that again immediately, but not at my house.
Yeah, in a controlled environment.
In a controlled environment with steel walls.
Yeah.
You just to totally jump gears here. You've done some work with NJTV, the New Jersey affiliate of PBS. You've scored several pieces for them, and you're
10
working,
years worth. Yeah,
that's awesome. First of all, congrats.
Thank you.
That's a space that I think a lot of musicians listening right now would that seems like a dream to break into sort of that space, and I'm sure it might not be as dreamy as maybe they're dreaming about, but you're working on some work with them right now. Can you talk a little bit about your work with public television?
Yeah. Steve Rogers originally had a show, Driving Jersey, and then started doing other things. There was a program, Here's the Story, that he was doing. But he was trying to figure out for a really long time his love of the Jersey music scene, how to translate that to television. Because, you had things like Austin City Limits, the Lonesome Pine show, like all these other things, but there was never anything that highlighted what was going on around here. And there's all this mystique, about Asbury Park and the Asbury music scene and whatever. But there's all, there's nationally, there's no proof of it. Everyone's just defaults to Bruce Springsteen, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. And he was trying to figure out a way to present that in a television format, and approached a lot of different things, a lot of different places and venues, and nothing ever quite worked out well. And granted, it was during the time when everybody's working, but now you have the pandemic, and people are trying to figure out different ways of surviving in music now that you don't have the same venues open and same opportunities. And I had worked with April Centrone, who has 10 Pearl in Long Branch. And when I first saw that space, I was just like, yes, this is awesome. Could do anything here. It's fantastic. So when we were talking one day, I was like, you need to go there, and then I think you'll have your show. And that's what happened. He went there and he was like, yep. What time can you be here? And during the pandemic, I had started working with Alec Feldman, who has a project called Insomniac Hotel. And he came up with an idea of distant duets, which is you get paired with another artist, and you have like only a couple chances to record and mix, and then you have to release whatever you have at the end of that. And he's like, why don't we work together on the first one? And then, it'll spiral. We each choose an artist, and then it spirals. And we did an improvisation, and we were like, wow, yeah, that's actually a song. Like, we wrote a song. And we put it up on Bandcamp and stuff, and I loved it. It was like, it was just felt so natural. And and he is heavy, and he works for Ryuichi Sakamoto, the composer, who's done countless film scores, and he is an aficionado of modular keyboards and synths and stuff. So he was adding all this technical digital stuff to my sort of more organic approach, and it was a really great way of expressing ourselves together in a live environment. And we recorded it for NJTV, and I believe it's going to be out in February.
How can people find that? So you said you released on Bandcamp as well?
Yeah, we under Insomniac Hotel. If you look that up under Bandcamp, there's a song called Untold that we did.
It's a great name, by the way.
I thought so.
Insomniac Motel.
Yeah.
That's great.
You know, when we did it live, it's complete. You know, it's like we were following a framework, and we got together and practiced a little bit, but not much. We more just like hung out and practiced, because it's that moment that I love improvising, you know, and not soloing. Like, I love improvising an entire composition, like coming up with a melody on the fly and coming up with a structure. And we both do field recordings, so there was a lot of that going on. Like, I walked around Red Bank during lockdown and just recorded with like stereophonic mics, just the sounds of the street, the birds, and then trucks and stuff, and then went down to the beach. And so there, you know, there's a lot of that in the background as well. So there's like everything that we were all going through during lockdown is in those recordings. So it's a really honest, captured moment. So that's like it's kind of like the pilot of this show, where you're trying to show that not, oh, we're struggling, you know, during the, you know, sorrow during the, you know, the pandemic. It's like, no, we all want to get the fuck back to work. You know, we all want to get out and make art. We want to, you know, there's nothing as good as offering your work to somebody. It's that devotional thing, you know? It's like, I don't care if there's 2 people in the audience, 2 people or 2,000. It doesn't matter. The fact that somebody would want to sit there and pay attention to something I'm doing, like, there's no amount, like, it's an unbelievable opportunity. And to occasionally get paid for it too. Like, what the fuck? Like, does that even make sense? You know, so it's like that we all want to get back to that moment where we can share with an audience to affect people. So, you know, people are coming up with live streams and all this technology kind of coming, even, you know, the stuff that's going on here. It's like, it's changing to deal with this. It's not like a resistance and we're just fighting it and waiting for it to dissipate. And, you know, it's like, we're going to change. We're going to figure out, we're going to have a different superhero costume this movie, and we're going to fucking do it.
Dude,
and that's
100%.
what that's about.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, last March, oh man, it feels like forever ago, and not at the same time. But last March, yeah, I mean, we had to kick it into high gear right away. What are we going to do with this?
Yeah.
I think if you're smart, you realize you have to adapt. You can't like resist or fight.
Yeah.
Usually the answer to just about everything in life. Anyway, adapting is a more intelligent approach than resisting and fighting.
How did you feel? Like, I mean, there was that, you know, when you realized we were in it, you know, like, how did you feel during that? Because I just, there was a good couple of days where I was just like shut down.
I had, I'm in a unique position where my wife, my best friend, she's an epidemiologist. Mm-hmm. So she had prepped and massaged me quite well for what...
She'd been prepping you for years.
Like a good wife. Like a good wife.
Like a good doctor.
Like a good doctor. She was prepping me like, look, like here's the reality, and regardless of what you might hear or what people might do, like, here's the reality here. Yeah. So I was getting a very boots on the ground, reality check of what a global pandemic that's viral, and that there wasn't a handle on yet from a medical standpoint, a treatment standpoint, certainly not from a vaccination standpoint, and also just from how that affects, what does that really mean? We had never really, like, I don't understand. Now, she's funny because it's like, some people are built for that. Some people are like, hey, hole up for a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Fine, let's do it.
I am not that person.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have children, too. So there's, oh, shit. Like, how are they going to respond to this? And then from a purely selfish, highly selfish standpoint, I'm like, I don't know if I could be around these people 24/7 every day. Shit's going to get wild and weird. And how do I keep it in check and not become a felon, basically? So, dude, I'm being serious.
You went right for like the major crime.
Well, then we can work our way back. That's part of my style. I like to throw it right out there. I have fantasy.
I wake up in the morning and go, how do I not be a felon? I can't figure it out.
I don't know.
Yeah. But, at the same time, I was, there was that, oh, this sucks. But then it was like, you know what? We've not had a war where we've had to live underground like they did in Europe. We have not had to live through a catastrophe, globally like that, like an ice age. It's like there's been shit that's happened on the planet. You can look back at Spanish flu, which killed more people than the war did. It was like we're going to be tested at certain times in our life. We can't just think, okay, well, I just got to keep working on my social media accounts, and I gotta, it's like, well, that stuff could all stop, and but I think it's built it's made some people crazy and whatnot, but it's also for other people made them more resilient and realize, yeah, we do need to actually maybe not do things the same way, maybe not go back to what it was because that was probably foolish, but going at it a better way and still having the same integrity and still doing good.
Well, I'm fortunate, and my family, we're very fortunate. So we're able to be flexible in just about any situation. Not everybody, not everybody's able to be flexible. Yeah. And some people are already sort of right at a breaking point by their own doing or not by their own doing. So we were already seated in a very comfortable place. So, I joked about, what I was worried about. That's a pretty bougie, silly problem to have. But from a creative standpoint, I think I realized right away, I better get to it. I better start thinking differently. I better start creating more. I've had more creative output in the last year than I have in the last 5 years combined. Yeah. Out of necessity, because I felt like I had to, or I was going to go a little cuckoo, but also like, well, fuck it. Why not? You and I are talking on a podcast right now that 2 years ago was like, one day it would be cool to do a podcast, because I fell in love with the media, the format, fell in love with it right away, thought it was the most interesting medium that I had encountered since I first heard music, recorded music. So I don't know if I would have taken the plunge. I don't know if I would have lobbied my boss for letting us use, Lakehouse recording studios. Place is beautiful, and the fact that it has such a large footprint and is already set up for isolation, that we're able to do this. In fact, when I was conjuring the idea in my head, the title of the podcast came first, really, before anything. It's like, oh, we could just kind of do it through the glass. And most people were like, that's going to look weird, or that's a silly name. And I'm like, I don't know.
And having started doing this, I think I only want to look at you through 2 panes of glass going forward. I just think
I think even when after everything,
yeah,
we're gonna walk around like this.
I'll bring a piece of glass, you bring a piece of glass, and we'll go out and have a drink, but there will be 2 sheets of glass between us.
Yeah, because it'll be a drag if we don't have that little bit of reflection. Like you'll be like, oh, that's what your face really. You don't have like a sun
no glare
flare across your cheek. What the fuck, man? Especially like with like my oily Italian skin, like it's like there's olive oil just like oozing out on the side. What have you?
What a great future we've got ahead of us.
Oh my God!
So many accoutrements we'll have to carry around with us.
So we've got the dust buster curling, and we're holding the glass.
What a road trip!
We're crying over fucking songs and dead people, and we're just I think we have a show.
What a road show!
I think we do. I think you and I have a road show at some point.
I think so. If we could work dinosaurs into that, I would be so happy.
What do you mean?
If we made it's one of my lifelong things. Like I consider myself a very, 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 very amateur paleontologist. I have 2 dinosaur bones. But there's a couple of years ago, they found a nodosaur, which is very similar to an Ankylosaurus, which is my favorite dinosaur, in Alberta, Canada, just through like excavation. Like digging a parking lot, like a guy with a backhoe found a almost perfectly complete dinosaur, and I want to go see that. You know what I mean? Like that's one of my things.
I got you covered. My father-in-law is a geologist and somewhat paleontologist. We have more dinosaur shit than. I got you covered. You want to go to excavation sites?
Yes.
I got you covered.
Like
I know the guy.
I went to Haddonfield, New Jersey, where the first like semi-complete dinosaur skeleton was found in the marl pits. And I went down there and talked to one of the guys that kind of like curates the little memorial plaque or whatever that they have set up in the town and stuff, and it's amazing to me. You know what I mean? That you could visit that type of thing. So it's like a lifelong thing. A couple months ago, a good friend of mine sent me like a dinosaur pop-up book, and I proudly display it on my coffee table. And I'm just like,
let me hook you up with some artifacts. I actually worked for him for a short period in his business, and so I was out there selling megalodon teeth, selling all sorts of things. I was in the scene for a while. I don't have a deep understanding.
I'm very Indiana Jones on some of that, though, where I'm like, this needs to be in a museum. It's like, just don't sell that stuff like it's got to be. But, it's funny. I went to like a dinosaur bone expo in Edison. And it was like, some people just sell bones and they don't know anything about them.
That was me, by the way. So don't.
Okay, all right.
Hey, look, man.
But it was one of those like,
I was trying to help out the family and make money.
Understand?
I had kids. What are you gonna do?
But of course, yeah. Gotta hawk teeth.
That's what I was doing.
But it was like one of those gem shows and also fossils.
I know that show. Yeah.
And there was this. I forgot the actual. But it was an aquatic reptile, and the guy was there, and I was like, it's amazing. I've never seen the juvenile version of this dinosaur, and it's amazing the progression, the way that the snout extends in the juveniles, because as adults it becomes much more broad, and the nasal channels are much more defined as they get older. And he's like, yeah, it's big, right?
That's what I would have said. I was always selling to someone who knew a lot more than me.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want to front and, pull out like a $30 word that I had heard my father-in-law say. So I would just sort of, it's like when you're with someone and they start saying some real heavy racist shit. And if you're not in a position to like engage that person
intelligently and talk them down and put them in their place.
Sometimes you're just like, well, and then you just kind of change the subject. Yeah. Like, I'm not in a position to get into a fist fight or really engage someone intellectually. So sometimes you have to just be like, well, you know what they say. You know, you just pull out some dumb
Right.
fucking statement.
Yeah.
Dude, we're so set up. I got you.
It's funny. Like I just instantly become a child again when I was just like, oh, fantastic, you know. But I'm totally down with that. Fantastic. What a good show that's gonna be.
This has been a good show. Jon Francis, thanks for coming on. Thanks for
We talked about nothing related to music. No, we did.
a
But I
little
brought
bit.
this thing here, and we didn't even talk about it.
Show us your thing.
So one of the groups that I'm in is Daughter Vision.
I hope we filmed through that. No, I'm being serious. I think those are some of the more interesting things. So I assume we're still filming. So on the other side of the wall, not through the glass, on the other side of the wall is Taylor, and she does an excellent job of keeping the technical stuff. So even though we're in like one of the greatest recording studios on planet Earth, we're not exactly always using all the studio's gear. So sometimes
You need smart people.
and I don't know where they are. I don't know where they are. We're always like trying to call them when we run into issues. No, Taylor's a smart person, and some of the stuff we're using is running off of physical batteries. So everything just dies sometimes, and now it's back alive. And I do hope that the video was running the whole time, so everyone could really enjoy that. It wasn't even 2 minutes. See how fast she moves and
Wow.
fixes stuff.
That would have taken me probably I would have stopped, had a sandwich.
I just would have left.
Yeah, you're on your own.
Well, I'm not superstitious, but I'm very much like, well, the universe is clearly telling me to shut the fuck up.
If that's the way the universe wants it, who am I
Who am I?
to stand in the way of progress?
Speaking of progress, you were showing us about some of your creations. What do you got there? And you got to make sure you hold it up so the good people can see
sure
it when you're ready.
So sometimes I just get weird dream ideas, and I sketch them out, and I send them to a guy named Kevin Siebold, and I'm just like, here, build this. And then in 2 weeks, he starts sending me pictures of the instruments. So I was like, I want something that I'm going to wear around my neck, that if I were in space and fighting some weird alien that's half aquatic, that I could play music that would focus the energy to kill him.
Sonic laser beams.
And this is it.
Fucking A.
Right? So he's like, why would you do that? And I was like, because this is the dream. Don't you understand? The dream informs the music.
So what the hell is that? That looks like, kind of guitar-ish.
Yeah, so it's basically like a guitar split, so that I could wear it on my neck. It's actually a door hinge that's keeping this flexible like this. Under that tribble is an actual door hinge.
I just thought that was something sexy you added.
It is kind of sexy, right? It's kind of like the Daughter Vision thing where it's, got sexy connotations to it. But, so when we're playing live, I'm not doing anything particularly special. There's lots of effects, and I'm playing with a bow and stuff. So it's more like the visual aspect of everything, just that's, the group Daughter Vision that I'm in. With a couple of people that work here.
Yeah, tell us about Daughter Vision and the good people in Daughter Vision. Because you talked about a lot of deep, heavy stuff, but then and not that Daughter Vision isn't deep and heavy, but you guys are fucking out there.
That's the funny thing. Daughter Vision actually is quite deep and heavy, but it looks like some weird kind of goofy little, fun project that we do. But there's a lot of Steve Honishowski, who's one of the originators of the band,
and it's his birthday today.
It is
Happy
his
birthday.
Happy birthday, Steve Hono. But he, apart from being an amazing bass player and keyboard player and singer, he's one of the best drummers I've ever played with. he had studied with Billy Martin from Medeski Martin and Wood. Like, he's accomplished. Like, he can play anything, but he doesn't even play drums in this band. He plays some percussion stuff, but he writes a lot of the stuff from a drummer's perspective. So it's very, rhythm heavy. There's a lot of different stuff going on. Bob Vack, our percussionist, complements the stuff that Steve does, and bringing Emily into it, Emily Grove as the vocalist, and she's very theatrical, has a very studied background. She can sing opera, she could sing anything. So it's just like all these different elements coming together in this surreal soup, I like wrote backstories for everybody's character, and it's like this,
you guys,
world that we
let's be clear. Daughter Vision goes all the way, which I think if you're going to do it, that's the only way to do it.
If you're going to do it, doing it half-assed is not going to work.
No, then it's ridiculous. Yeah. Whereas you guys are not ridiculous.
We're ridiculous, but we're ridiculous in a good way.
It's art. And I would agree. Yeah. It's very rhythmic, very percussive. And it kind of reminds me of some older industrial music. Some of the stuff you guys have done gives me like an industrial music kind of feel. Sort of the European, almost the stuff that was coming out of Germany.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have
very
like
cool.
Oysters and Neubauten, like Kraftwerk. The band Japan is a huge influence on us. Like, that's all there, but we're trying to bring something else into it. And it's almost like I could show up with anything, and as long as I write it into the story of the band, it works, so our one of the original guys, Brian Powell, that basically was Daughter Vision. It was a solo project that he had, and then Steve joined, and then the rest of us joined. He with his wife, they converted a bus and started traveling the country. And we were like, okay, well, that was fun. But Steve wanted to keep it going. So we're like, all right, let's try to figure out how to do it. And he's actually still an active member of the band. Like, we still collaborate with him because really the essence of the group is what he came up with. So we can't deny that, but we're kind of blazing new territory, trying different things, going in different directions.
So what is a band like Daughter Vision with the, maybe not so much musically, but theatrically, the storyline, what does that satisfy in you? Because that's not you. That's not necessarily all of your personality. There's some alter ego stuff going on. What does that do for you? Why do you do that?
It's unbelievably, it's a way of like getting out of your own shit, like looking at what you do from a different perspective. It's almost like suspending, your own nonsense ego for a minute and being something else, and creating something that didn't exist before, or reinterpreting what you're trying to do from a different way, and taking a completely different view on it. So there's all the theatrics. There's Emily comes from space. There's like Steve is a million years old. There's like all this different stuff. Bobby was born in a junkyard and he talks to cats. Like there's my character Valhalla came from a metal band in Norway and got stuck over here in Asbury Park. And it's just like, so we just created this thing, and it's something that exists, like it's its own entity. And it's really satisfying to look at something that you can build with people and have it live its own life, So it's a serious departure from anything that I would normally do. Like I really didn't play regular guitar before I was in Daughter Vision. I kind of just dicked around on acoustic, But then, it was like, oh, I actually have to learn like how to play guitar. So I just sat there and like learned how to play guitar and did it for this band. So it's just like, oh, well, that's what's required, like we have to do that. They were like, oh, we need a giant, pink sausage ape monster that flies. Well, we got to build it. Not that we have, but I'm just saying, like, whatever you need to do for this type of thing, you're like, all right, well, let's figure out how to do that, So
That's pure art.
yeah, art for art's sake. Yeah,
For art's sake, of course, the best kind.
yeah. And it's a unbelievably fulfilling thing, Like it's like, what can we do next? And it's like pandemic doesn't matter, It's like we did the Something Wrong with My Building video. We did in very controlled environments, but with a green screen and socially distanced live. So that all still came together. You know what I mean? It's like we can still do weird shit no matter what's going on because we built our own world. It's like anything can happen there, and it generally does. So I finished early.
Son of a bitch. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, let's have some more immediately after the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I can't wait to see what you do with this, because knowing you for as long as I have, I'm glad that it's not just a dream. It's like, oh, I could do this, but you did it, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I really appreciate it. So thank you for the opportunity.
I feel the same way about you and your expressions in life. Thank you, brother. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.